Hey, it is blog 13?
It is vlog 13, and it's
Cool.
vlog 13 that's late because we were sick last week, so
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Don't care. Suck it up.
We're here to abuse you, just a week late.
Yeah. We're like 4 days late. Yeah. So hey.
Hey everybody, we're going to talk about inventing your own material versus what's in the books today, basically.
Yeah.
And we're going to use just one question that came in, but it's a variation on a lot of questions we've gotten, which is, in your opinion, how much of the core book should you actually listen to and use? Which is a huge question. It seems like it's a small question, and it's not. It's a lot.
It doesn't seem like a small question. Yeah. So we have all the books here, and we're going to flip through them and remember what we don't like or what we do like. Right. That's the question. What we do like.
How much of the book should you use is the question. So it really, it depends. Some of the books are better than others. Some have great parts and then horrible parts. And, we're really big fans of the Ragnarok book, but then the Yazada book's kind of a hot mess. So you kind of have to look at a few different things. John's flipping through the Yazada book right now, which is why you can't see
I think it may be the worst book.
The Yazada book had a lot of things that
I
really
hate
drove us nuts.
Companion, so...
But the Yazada book, it's... the God write-ups are great. The world-building write-ups are
no,
fine.
They're not. The God write-ups are mediocre at best.
Some of the God write-ups have problems, actually. That's true. But
We've had this problem the whole time when we're talking about this question. Anne likes to say things are way better, and then I'm like, they're not. You're just saying that because you want them to be great.
But we do feel like the Yazada book probably has the most problems. It has a PSP that is really lackluster that we rewrote extensively because half of it was just the same boon 4 times in a row. It's got a Stars Purview that is all about time, and then its Titan is also all about time, and it's in a distinctly non-mythic way. It doesn't really make any sense. And the Titan avatars are all the Devs and Devas of Yazada myth, and yet those don't have anything to do with time either. They're kind of shoehorned in there. And then you've got some of the most overpowered relics ever in here. The Emerald Studded Sword that does ag automatically for no cost is one example. It's just a mess. And we know it was written by a couple different people, and they're not even people that we dislike. But
Okay. I do. I dislike them. So here's the book. I would say none of it. You can use none of it. The adventure is okay at the end if you change a lot of it. The relics are horrible. The Pantheon's horrible.
the Yazada themselves in Persian myth are good pantheon. You should play with them. They're cool. But
Yeah, they're super cool, but these write-ups
they're
are
kind of a mess.
tangential at best.
But
And all the art is just completely reused, and I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it.
that's true.
It
The
took
art's
and it
reused
took
from
forever to
previous
long.
books.
It took forever to come out, and they said they were going to. It was because of the art and the deals they were making with artists. And then a year later, when it finally came out, they used the same exact art, and it's super disappointing.
We maybe shouldn't have started with Yazada because John hates it so much.
Oh, I'm
but-
gonna get going. All right.
So, this is kind of a different situation. This is the Nemeton Devos supplement from Bibliotheca Judite. So it is an official Scion supplement, but it was only published in France. Not everybody has it. It's the one that has the Gaulish Pantheon in it. And we actually translated it a few years ago. I translated it for John for his birthday, and so we've had it a little longer. It's now available as a PDF, which it wasn't back in the day. But it's a good example of somebody trying really hard with really thin material. The Gaulish Pantheon has a lot of gods in it that are quintessentially Gaulish Celts and are very cool, but that probably wouldn't be Legend 12 because there's just no information left on them. And so it's a book that does a lot of cool stuff, but it's almost all writer invented. There's some good stuff to use in here. It's really cool that they make an effort at dealing with fate and fate bonds in a more meaningful way in Scion, but it's kind of a hot mess. If you want it to be mythologically accurate, most of it is made up.
Yeah.
And they do a good job with making it up, but it's not, being fate bond related doesn't have anything to do really with Gaulish mythology. And, half of these gods are just kind of made up. Gobnios really ought to be a Tuatha. Figures like Asus, we know from one carving and have no clue what they meant or did, that kind of thing. So they have some cool birthrights, they have some cool sample scions, but they're... it's a problem that Scion runs into a lot. If you want to play a game that is more mythically accurate, some parts of Scion do a great job with that, and some parts, like the French supplement, basically, if they start from something that doesn't have much information, there's not much you can do, and it's mostly made up.
Yeah. I have a soft spot in my heart for it because Anne translated it for me, but I'm not sure there's anything in this you should be using. Maybe some birthright ideas.
I think it's a really great example for if you're a storyteller and you need to look at kind of how do I help my players as they approach God, build new myths and cosmoses. This is a good example of people that built a cosmos kind of from nothing, come from sort of scraps. And hopefully your players are going to have more stuff than like always do because they're doing stuff right now. But
yeah.
So it's not one of the, not really a go-to source. It's a nice supplement, but it's not necessary.
It's nothingness.
Okay. We have Scion God.
We put these in randomly, so here you go. God is one of my favorites.
Yes.
Next to Ragnarok. Awesome art. Some of the best art from the series.
Yeah. That cover art is golden. It introduces a lot of the high level, like they had some trouble at lower levels.
A lot of huge mistakes.
Yes.
A lot of the high level stuff is not well thought out, and it's not well balanced at all. Most of the high level stuff we've changed. For boons and epics, I don't like ultimates and avatars.
They're messy.
They're messy. They need to be changed. I like the idea of them.
Yes.
But they need to be changed. And then the balance is just batshit horrible.
Yeah,
you
don't
can't
use
any
stats
of these NPCs.
for any of these gods.
You can't use any of these monsters.
The monsters are either your PCs will not be able to touch them, or they'll be able to murder like Legend 12 god beasts with no difficulty. And then the god stats, Sangria could kill Hera like 4 times in one shot. Like it's just not a good idea.
4. Like heroes can kill her once. Like it's very silly.
Yeah, so they're poorly built. So that's kind of the case across the board for Scion books. They're like if you have stats for antagonists, they're not well built. But there are some really cool things.
Half these overworlds are great. Half the overworlds are trash. I ended up using most of them because I was younger and I didn't have a lot to go on, and they're very evocative, and so some of them are very, very good for just quick stuff.
In them.
And it's very nice to be able to just open up a book and tell the PCs what is there when you get there.
Yeah, and if you're an ST that doesn't really care about mythic accuracy as much as coolness,
we're doing recommendations, and we never recommend that person exists. So we're not gonna BS them.
I think the Titan Realms have the similar problem to the overworlds, where like some of them are really great, and then some of them are kind of horrible messes to try to use. And then that goes double for the Titan avatars. Like some Titan avatars have great write-ups. Like Surtur is amazing; he's perfect. But then like Tethys makes no sense at all. It's kind of just shoved in there and doesn't make any. It's just weird choices that don't really make much sense to us. And then
they give you like some nice lists of stuff and some nice Titan spawn. They give you Ryujin.
Yes.
That's cool.
And there are some good plot seeds in there, especially when you're struggling with trying to say, okay, what do I do for a plot that's going to challenge God level characters? And
actually, the story is one of the better ones. Sans Ragnarok, the playable supplement. It's not balanced, and everybody should be able to like run roughshod through it, but it gives you some idea of what kind of stories you can do with God, because it does like split people up and like have everybody doing their own personal stuff.
It's really good at spotlighting gods and saying, showing you kind of the power scale you're at now.
Yeah.
It has the Keepers of the World in it, which are kind of awful. Don't use them.
Yeah.
They're good. Yeah, they're good. They're a good experiment, but they shouldn't be Legend 12, basically.
Right, but they are a good idea to show you kind of what antagonists can be like at that level, or like the ideas they might have, the things the players might be needing to stop.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas behind that. Like, these are people who could have a beef with the gods that you maybe could have your PCs run into and either stop them or throw in with them or whatever. They're badly statted at power levels, and they wield more influence than they should be able to wield at all. But there's good ideas behind them.
The stories are really great. The Revelation story in particular.
Oh, the intro fiction.
Yeah, the intro fiction is really, really good. I think that gives you the Mount Olympus one, the 2 fathers, 1 son, I think.
Yeah, like the fiction is pretty great all the way through the first 3 core books, but the God ones are really.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. Where like Donnie like shows up and Ares is banging his mom, and he's like,
it's awful.
He's like, I'm a god now. Fuck off. I don't have to put up with your bullshit. I'm just done. A lot of the fiction I think is probably the best.
It does
maybe in the series, and it's really good at helping you kind of imagine the kind of stories that and interactions.
What does it look like when a modern person becomes that kind of a god and has to interact with these people?
Yeah.
It's a really great example of
very,
that.
very good.
The only thing I would add is that the god level antagonist band, the Shinsengumi, and this kind of goes through the Shinsengumi throughout the 3 books, they're kind of a horrible mess. They have they have really cool character ideas.
The starter band's horrible too, so
but don't use their stats because they'll just die.
Basically anything in the book that has stats you can't use because it doesn't make sense.
But they do have very cool ideas, and especially like once like Blair and Orlando become gods, and you kind of have 2 sides of how to interpret Zubia Scions. It's really cool. Blair and Orlando? Yes, Orlando, because for spoilers for anyone who hasn't read this, Orlando becomes the goddess of sacrifice and just tears her skin off and just has no skin. She's the daughter of Jubei is kind of similar to what he does. And then Blair is a different NPC.
She's not in this book.
Where is she?
There you go.
Yeah. Well, she's really cool too. And she does that in a completely different way. So
Yeah, because she's in the little pet group in Demigod.
she is, yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to it.
Alrighty.
Ragnarok.
Best book.
Best book.
And that's not just because we're biased for Norse, because, I mean, we love
I'm not.
Norse.
I don't care.
But I would have loved it if this were an Aztec book more.
Yeah.
But this...
Jack Norris, who wrote this book, really great, and he cares a lot about it. It was obviously a project of love. There's a lot more work into it than I'm sure he got paid for. And he's problems with the book. He's gone back and answered questions.
Yeah, he's been very approachable online, which is really
Yeah,
great. And
yeah.
it's just gorgeously done. Like, there's some things we don't agree with. Like, some of the new Legend 12 gods probably shouldn't be Legend 12. But even so, like, the world building is amazing. The descriptions of things are amazing. There's a lot of thought put into, how a really Norse-centric... Sorry, our cats are freaking out. A really Norse-centric story should go. Like, the Norse flavoring is amazing throughout. The introduction of things like maimings is a really cool idea. They brought in two purviews, complete purviews that need to be in the game already, Illusion and Frost, which were excellent and can be applied across all pantheons. It's just a really great book. There's some messy stuff. I think because there's nothing to go on for the Vanir, most of the stuff in the Vanir chapter is pretty much made up. But like we were talking about with the French pantheon, that's kind of something you have to do once you get to that point.
Yeah. Past the descriptions of maiming the relics are kind of bad. Like Freyr's sword in here is a 5-dot relic that just fights for you.
Well, that's what First Sword does. But
yeah, but it's too powerful.
Yes, it is. But I think they do a great job of talking about politics and interactions between the gods so that you know what you're coming into with gods coming into that situation.
Yeah.
And
all the bits about each individual god, even when they're not super accurate, are just really nice, and to have like a picture of each one. And
yes, and it's great that somebody expanded on the stuff in the original 4 books.
Kevin Sorbo's on a pig.
And that's something that every book should probably have, really. So there's just a lot of excellent stuff in there. And even if it's mostly fabricated, the Vanir Aesir interaction stuff is mostly made up by the writer, but it's a really good story. It's a great jumping off point for a million different things. Even if you want to change it to be more accurate or you want to come up with your own spin, it's a really great story.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about things like Delling as the Allfather of the Vanir. He's not actually a real thing.
Gotcha.
Or, having Ellie be one of the Vanir when she's really Ellie appears in one story and doesn't have anything to do with the Vanir as far as we know. But, he does really cool things with them. So they're not overly accurate, but they're a great example of how to do really cool, creative stuff with the scanty material that every mythology has some areas where it's just kind of gray and sketchy. So.
And then the story at the end, the doings, the adventure is really good. I don't know, Dean's written on here, and I usually don't like his stuff, but if he wrote this particular one, he did a really good job. Best use of prophecy so far in the game. They give you prophecies with each little story, each little snippet.
And that's really helpful, especially if you have trouble running prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, this is what it should be looking like. You can kind of plan for other stuff that way.
Yeah, it's done really well. I mean, of course, there are some messes and some things don't make sense, but it's an adventure that goes from hero to god, and it's done really well, and everything kind of builds on itself. It's a lot like how I run a story, and it's really well done.
Yeah, so Ragnarok and God probably our favorite two of the line.
There's no problem. They're our favorite two in that order, descending.
So let's talk about things I hate. Demigod has so many problems. Demigod drives me fucking nuts.
Demigod's fine. But go on.
Well, Demigod has some admirable plans. Demigod tries to kind of expand the world.
Really quick. I think I did this. I put the book in a candle fire by accident, right? That was me, not Tom.
This is our second copy of Demigod because the first one was
That's right, yeah. Tom broke the first one, and then I burned the second one.
Yeah, so we use our books hard. They don't sit on the shelf and not get used.
We don't use them anymore.
We use
at
them
all.
really hard.
They sit on the shelf.
So Demigod does some cool stuff. It
has Atlantis. That's why you hate it.
It does have Atlantis, and I do hate Atlantis. It was very disappointing to be like, that's what we're giving you. Is we're giving you a completely made up out of nowhere thing that makes no sense, and we could be giving you, especially since one of the goals of Demigod, it seems like, is to expand the world and what you have to work with as a storyteller and things to go do as a player, and then what you get is Atlantis, which has no grounding in world mythology at all, pretty much. So that's frustrating.
Intro story's fun again.
Yes, and then the other big thing that drives me batshit about this book is that again, great attempts to expand the world, but horrible execution. There are a lot of plot seeds for areas of the world that aren't covered. Like they try to give you an Inca plot seed, they try to give you a Slavic plot seed, and they're almost all without exception completely terrible. They're not accurate. They either don't give you enough to go on, or they give you things that have nothing to do with the area they're in, or they rely on common misconceptions from Wikipedia kind of stuff. Like it's just really frustrating to read through. My personal pet hatred one is the It's Pablo Little story seed, which involves her being seduced by the Simurgh, which it sets as an always male phoenix bird from Persian mythology. This is pre-Yazada, and none of that makes any sense whatsoever. And
yeah, and she's like in her own realm being sad town all the time for no reason.
yeah, and they set her as like a Legend 6 demigod or something. It doesn't make any sense. It's awful. And it's obviously someone trying to come up with really cool new stories you could be doing.
The picture of her's decent.
Yeah, there's some good art in here. That is a true statement. I hate the picture of her seducing the Simurgh, but it is a good art picture. There's a lot of cool stuff. A lot of the lesser immortals section is including things that really should be gods, and for some reason have been set as lesser immortals, which is weird. Science very inconsistent overall about what a lesser immortal is versus what a lesser god is, and when they're the same and when they're not. So.
Yeah, and she's one of the most powerful people in Aztec mythology, and it has her as a Legend 7 Titan spawn.
Yeah, who was easily punked by a Simurgh that bears no resemblance whatsoever to the Persian Simurgh in the first place, and it doesn't make any sense, and so it makes me crazy. But Demigod does it. I really appreciate that it tries to expand that. It says there is so much more in the world than we've covered in the world mythology that you could be trying to look at. Go look up the Incas. Go look up the Slavs. Do something.
But don't use the things we have
these are
because
awful.
they're fucking batshit. Also, the power scale is like way off the charts. Some of the boons are good. Like they did a good job, I think, giving boons that fit into the demigod template in that little section of power.
And most of those boons I like, actually. There are a few misfires like Fate and Switch that probably should be in there, but most of them I'm good with. The concepts are really good.
The concepts are okay. But then the powers of the NPCs are really just up and down, up and down, up and down. And so, for the most part, what they did was they found out, which they didn't end up keeping with God, hey, hero level NPCs that build themselves for combat can actually completely decimate these demigod creatures. So how do we make them worthy? They're just immortal.
Yeah.
You just cannot hurt them.
They introduced a mechanic where this character can never die no matter what you do, ever. Purview avatars can't kill this guy.
I don't think it's true.
Well, they don't say it outright, but they say this guy can never die no matter
what. The main thing they put in most of the NPCs, if they're a named NPC from mythology, is no one of lower legend can do any damage ever.
Or equal legend. Because they want you to, I think, that's my memory. Like, people like Sisyphus or Tantalus, they're like, you just can't kill these guys. And while I get the whole, well, shit, we've made it too easy to kill our major NPCs, they shouldn't be that easy to kill, the solution should be to stat them better, not to give them a bullshit power that means that so no matter what your players do, they can never win. Because that's shitty for your players. Like, you don't want them to kill an NPC who's important, but if they pull off some crazy, amazing shit, they should probably be able to do it. And giving them a power that says, I don't care if you just blew 4 legendary deeds and did the most amazing stunt of your life, didn't matter. That sucks. I wouldn't want to do it. Did you find it?
No. Ixion doesn't have it.
Yeah. But anyway, even if it is anybody of lower legend, like it's still... Because theoretically, if you're going to have this one guy be the big bad guy...
Simurgh has it.
It's going to be higher legend than other players.
Simurgh's always born the next morning. I guess he's a phoenix.
It's not how it works in Persian myth. He could be reborn in like 1,000 years. So but like... The conflation between the Simurgh and like the Greek phoenix, they do have a lot of similar things going on. They probably influence each other, but they're not the same. Just like most rebirth birds across different mythologies aren't really handled the same.
Scylla and Charybdis are some of the most well done.
That's true. I love the new Scylla and Charybdis. And if Ixion's motorcycle centaurs are in here, they're great too.
Yeah.
There's some great examples of let's update this with cool new modern stuff because Scions are modern and we want to do some stuff that is mythically flavored.
That's really hard to do, and it's really a jumping off point if you can figure it out.
Yeah, there's some really excellent stuff on those. Is this also the one that has the Furies in it, and they're awful? Because I think that's what's in here.
Probably, yes. Yeah,
yeah, and the Furies are like lower level demigod level
It's called Invulnerability is the special power. Against most enemies, Sisyphus won't even bother to dodge. He cannot be harmed or killed by anyone with a legend rating less than him. And a bunch of people have that invulnerability power.
Yeah. And it's basically just there to be like, sorry we didn't stat this better for you, but here it'll stop your PCs from killing you.
Yeah, instead of just giving him
That's
a high
shitty.
DV.
Yeah, just give him more DV and soak. Like, you need to stat this guy better. But they didn't do that. We're not sure why. Maybe it just was more work than they wanted to put into it. But so that sucks. Again, our theme of don't use stats from these books ever. Yeah. Pretty much.
Hero.
And then Hero, which is the very first one.
It's a fine book.
We definitely, when we read it, we were like, this is really cool. We want to play this game. So.
Yeah. The things are mostly balanced. Because of the epic scale is so low.
Yes,
things are mostly
true.
balanced. There are large sections of this book that are literally cut from other World of Darkness books and shoved into it that make no sense.
Like when they talk
about... they ran out of time. I'm being dead serious. It's not like I don't even know. They ran out of time, and they put other systems in here to deal with the systems that they wanted.
Which is why you have weird stuff like if you act your nature, you get a willpower back. Which in Scion is kind of completely negligible because there's so much you can do to get willpower back. But that was something that's a holdover from Old World of Darkness where willpower is really hard to get back.
Yeah. A bunch of this middle stuff on like what you can do for social stuff or like diseases and... viral insight, the disease stuff, I think is taken directly out of the anime game.
Oh, out of Exalted. And unfortunately it doesn't work very well here because of the scaling epics thing. Like as soon as you got 2 or 3 epic stamina, none of those systems matter anymore because it never hurts you.
I'm not sure how, like, Exalted has something like scaling stuff. I don't understand.
We haven't played Exalted. To give you full disclosure, we've like barely dabbled in Exalted, so we're not going to be big experts on what Exalted does that is important to you.
The weapons are fucking horrible. Like...
There's a weird.
They go out of their way to make the weapons so that when you read them, you don't know what they are.
Like they just give you.
Like I know what a Skigox is, but most people don't know what a Skigox is.
And it's cool that they wanted to tell you what those things are, but if nobody explains what a Makakilo is.
Yeah, and they have a little description here. But if I want to go, okay, I want to make a character with an axe. I don't want to have to read the description of every small thing to figure out where the axe is.
Yeah, could be any of these things.
The different damage on an unharmed, a heavy and a light unarmed attack is completely batshit insane.
Yeah, we took that out a long time ago because who wants to mess with that tiny... Like, it's just a messy system that isn't helping. It's an added game.
The entire weapon system should be scrapped, and it should be a very base system where you just move a couple points around to make the weapon make more sense.
And there's a big disconnect here again because they were coming kind of from this is the first Scion book and they had this plan for the scaling epics but they hadn't really gone very high with it, and so there's a lot of disconnect between weapons that make sense for fighting like mortals and doing things with mortal world, which you have to do as an early Scion, but then that make no sense at all once you've gone up in just a little bit of legend.
So obviously followers, creatures, guides are bad.
Yeah.
Just straight up bad.
Like good ideas, bad execution.
Yeah,
again.
yeah. Pretty much.
There's a lot of really great ideas in Hero because
everything on our website that is different, we thought, oh, this was a good idea.
Let's make the stats better.
Yeah, but
let's make the mechanics
it was improperly done.
Yeah, it's obviously the people that wrote it were really excited about it. It's a great new game concept, and again, the intro fiction gives you a great idea of how things are going to go. It's just that it was kind of rough because it was new and there's a lot of parts.
There was like 30 goddamn writers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not enough time, and it was while White Wolf was starting to suffer and go downhill, and yeah. Last book.
And then Companion.
Like Anne hates Demigod, I hate this 10 times as much. I fucking hate this book. This is there's so many problems in here, and so many arguments that have been started because of things in this book.
Let me say some things I like about this book. I like a lot of the new booms, even if they're badly mechanically. I think there's good ideas in them. And I love that we finally got the Devas and the Tuatha and the Shen in here because we needed them. The Devas especially was like insane that they were not in Scion already because they're even still a huge pantheon today. And I think I also actually really love that they gave it a real effort to say, okay, here's what birthright points are, because it was so poorly defined in Hero that nobody had any clue how to make birthrights, and you were getting like crazy overpowered birthrights all over the map. They still did things we don't like that we've taken out, but at least they really cleared it up for people that had no clue what was going on. So that was a good choice.
Okay, I will agree with all of those statements. Except that the Shen need to be here. I hate them. The pictures of the Irish are great, though.
That's true. I love the art for the Tuatha section. And I actually really, even though it is full of horrible examples that I despise, I love that they gave you here's a template for how to build your own pantheon SPCs.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
The examples they use with the Slavic pantheon are awful. They're like, I don't know who wrote them, and I don't want to be mean to that person, but they're like Wikipedia level research. It's full of inaccuracies and stuff that doesn't make sense. And
Subpar Wikipedia. I mean, this is
some
all.
of those gods.
I don't think any research was done on anything in here that wasn't off of Wikipedia. But this is Wikipedia, but bad. Like, not
like
double checked.
There's gods on that roster as Legend 12, like Zisselbalk, that are like one line in one source with no information. They're like, let's make that guy Legend 12. It doesn't make any sense. And, you know, the purview of duality is obviously based on American gods, not actually anything in Slavic myth, and it's a horrible mess. So, but I love that they did say, you know, we know you're going to, they recognized people are going to hit God and they're going to need to make their own pantheon, and we need to give people a way to do that. And for what it's worth, those steps, even though the examples are bad, the steps actually do help you work on visualizing what that's like. So I like that. But then the rest of the
Irish PSP is horrible.
Eunuch is so overpowered.
It's way crazy. It's too overpowered. It's messy. You need 2 levels of it, and then you're like super amazing, and then you never need levels of it again, really.
The problem is that it gives you this thing where it's like, well, you know, if you fail, you'll die, but no storyteller runs it that way. So they just become like super, super overpowered.
The Titan Realm's horrible. Everything.
Crom Kura, you've heard us whine about a lot. Crom Kura is a horrible mess. Retread, they were trying, but...
Also, how they split up the book is just like massive sections of shit.
That's because they released it as
They
parts,
released it
and
as
then
separate
instead
PDFs.
Of integrating it,
Yeah.
they just smacked them together.
No, it was like, we want a little bit of money. We need a little bit of money. It was like, our company is falling apart. We're dying here. We need $2 from each person for the Irish supplement. And then we'll put them all together and buy our book.
That's true, but it is horribly put together.
Okay.
I don't want to pretend like we have some insider information that White Wolf was falling apart, because we don't. But and then, you know,
then there's Manifestations of Ichor. This is just part 2, where they just they do a little bit towards fate bonds, but they do it really poorly.
They kind of realize at this point that fate bonds are such a mess in the Scion system already. Like, they're really great at hero, except for the fact that you never get them at hero. But then they kind of become meaninless.
So they're not really great, like,
I love the section on it in Hero. They do a great job of explaining like what fate bonds are and the different kinds and all that. But at this point, it becomes crazy, and you know they try to help you out with it, but it doesn't really do much for you. And I like some of the new Nax intros, but most of them need mechanical fixing because some of them are horribly unbalanced.
Then let's see. In this section is what if you want to start higher legend? Well, if you start at legend 10, you need all these millions of things fate bond to you. You have some extra bonus points that probably won't get you where you need to be, and you get 1 attribute at 6, and one god boon minimum, and 3 demigod boons. Now this is in a system where you don't have to buy them in order, so the only mandate is that you have 4 boons on your character at legend 10. That's fucking horrible.
Well, I guess they hope you're going to buy more with your regular points.
And then randomly Nax and boons are kind of spread throughout this, as well as new birthrights.
And I mean, a lot of them are good. Some of the birthrights are horrible. There's, again, a lot in this book about trying to bring in stuff from other mythologies that haven't been touched on. They try to do the Gilan, which are ghouls from Arab myth, and they try to do the Meshushu, which is the dragon from Babylonian myth, and they kind of make a horrible hash out of both of them. You know, they give it a try. They bring in the Holy Grails in there somewhere, and kind of just gloss past. Like, it's a lot of, we wanted to use all these cool ideas, and we just really didn't put them together well, or didn't.
They put Legendary Surge in here, which is broke as fuck.
Oh, Legendary Surge. It is. Thank God we fixed that, because it was a bad idea.
Chinese write-up is just horrible.
Yeah, I like some of the God write-ups are good, but the Chinese section in general suffers from this really weird, like, communist bent, where, like, the writers are using Chinese mythology, but they're also, like, giving it this really strong communism. I don't know if it's communism specifically, but they're using a lot of very modern ideas of what China is like, as opposed to like mythological and traditional ideas of China. So it's got a weird flavor. And then of course Handan is a horrible mess.
Handan is a horrible mess. The PSP is garbage. It
is our most hated PSP.
It's last Airbender, the PSP.
And it doesn't actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah, Joden Bloat might come close. No, this one is
I think
worse.
I like Joden Bloat more, because at least Joden Bloat like kind of thematically hung together for me. But they both needed fixing, but I like that they try to give you kind of a, you know, God politics are going to happen. Be prepared. They do sort of try to push you toward that, but they don't spend much time on it because they got to go and put some more bad birthrights in.
Yeah. Then some more bad birthrights, some additional weapons that don't make sense, a bunch of vehicles. Is this where we have the...
Oh, where we have the battleship that can't be killed or something?
We have that you can get armor as a human that starts with 10 bashing soak. so that you can just make that into a relic that is a jacket for 1 dot, and then it outdoes all other
relic armor from
yeah.
the other books. Like it's again, I think, a problem with there were a lot of freelancers writing this, and they weren't writing together, and they weren't all even the same people who had worked on the previous books. So there's just a lot of this might make sense.
This taser has a range of 20 yards. 20 yards.
That's pretty impressive for a taser. That's like an Electro-Man taser. But it's a problem with like these are freelancers, so even if they wrote stuff that makes sense with itself, it doesn't really make sense with the other books that are all out already at this point, except for Yazada, because they, I'm sure they did checking, and I'm sure the editing department worked on it, but there's still just so many places where it's obvious that they're not together with what was already written.
And they added the first 3-speed weapon, which also adds the rule that you can't go below 3 with minus weapon for a relic unless you have 3 speed. Then you can go to 2.
Which is horribly broken.
Which is fucking tarded.
Oh my god. Can you imagine if Stingray could hit people every 2 ticks?
Every 2 ticks?
Jesus
Twice?
Christ.
Twice every 2 ticks?
Twice every 2 ticks. No deal. Yeah, so horrible.
Yeah, the lifting stuff, they made attempts, but it's bad.
There's the weird stuff with like, here we're going to stat a relic. It's not a real relic from mythology, but it's like every relic of that type. They try to do a comparative mythology thing where they're like, this spear is every important spear in mythology, and it's messy and not very exciting, really, because you could just be making the cool spears from mythology, so why would you do that?
Then there's Order of the Divine Glory, which I just don't care about.
I like that they made an attempt, but I don't like the way that attempt came out. It pisses off so many people.
Then there's Companions, which are batshit insane, and I don't understand why they're here. And someone obviously spent a lot of time. There's several levels to, like, the blood bonding. They're ghouls from Vampire, but, like, they're also fate bond to you. It's super, super weird.
Like,
and I don't understand
weird
it.
that it's there on top of the fate bond idea, because the fate bond, like, if you get fate bond to somebody as a bosom companion, then that's what they are. Like, why do you need a separate system completely when that's already happening?
Yeah, and you can, like, take over the body of your people.
Yeah, it's stuff that doesn't make any sense. Like, it doesn't, like, it's stuff that is, like, really modern conceptions of God is doing things, and it doesn't match.
Yeah, and they get bonuses to a bunch of stats like Jotun Bloat, but it's kind of on par or better than Jotun Bloat, even though you don't have Jotun Bloat.
Because Jotun Bloat don't have enough problems yet.
Relic section is fine, and then some story seeds,
and
which
I like
are
the story
fine and
seeds
helpful.
fine. Yeah, they're good. There are some really good gems in there. And then the Devas needed to be in the game so badly. I'm so glad they're there. And their PSP kind of has a lot of stuff that doesn't really make sense, but it's got the right ideas beneath it. So when we rewrote it, we were pretty much like, we'll just throw away the bad stuff. But there's still weird stuff. Reacher doesn't make any sense.
Lakshmi has appearance, fertility, guardian health, mystery moon, perception, psychopomp, water.
She does not have those things.
What the fuck?
And there's a big, I think one of the major problems with the god write-ups for this is that the writers were stuck between trying to do traditional Hindu myth and trying to do modern Hindu worship, and modern Hindu worship has a lot more, this god doesn't do that, but like is symbolically associated with that because that is in turn symbolically related to something else. So they might be like, well, this god is related to water because of, the water of ever-flowing consciousness, and then that's related in some other way. Like, it isn't stuff that makes sense without context at all, and that doesn't match up the way the other gods are done. So we had a lot of problems with that.
Vishnu has animal, not a specific animal.
Well, he does have animal ken eagles after that.
So
someone
animal
just
ken
got that
eagles.
backwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right, because there's another one in here too. It's like animal elephant, I think.
Yeah, Ganesh.
Yeah, whoever did this did not know the rules, and that is bad. But so Vishnu has animal, fertility, guardian health, magic, psychopomp, water, perception, strength, charisma, intelligence.
And I mean, if you're looking at modern conceptions of Vishnu where he's almost becoming like a monotheistic center of the religion for some people, then sure, he has all the things. But I mean, you have to kind of draw a line somewhere with Hinduism because you have to make it match up to the other ancient religions that we're working with, and they did not do that, and so it just became a horrible mess.
Titan Realm's a mess.
Yeah, Vritra, like, I see why they wanted Vritra to be the big antagonist, but making him the realm instead of, like, the chief titan didn't make any sense, and then the Titan realm of Drat itself, like, has so many conceptual problems. And then there's this, which I know there are a few people out there, and you're probably some people watching this that love this, but
No,
we hate it. We
it's
hate
awful.
This thing. It's a mess.
Your opinion is invalid.
So, it's just...
This is Hitler with a dagger. Your opinion is invalid.
It's just... At its core, the idea that the ancient pantheons could be involved in big world events is not the worst idea. If you were going to run a historical campaign, you could run it and be like, oh, the Aesir were in some way involved in Nazi Germany, and that's fine. But we have a big problem with a lot of, with saying figures like Hitler always have to be, we've talked about this before, that figures like Hitler have to be Scions, which takes, the power of that story away from humanity. We don't like that. And then there's the Yankee Pantheon, the Allied Pantheon, the Soviet Pantheon, which are horrible, horrible messes.
This is the worst thing ever.
Like, they're full of people that are not Legend 12, that were never viewed as gods, that have never been treated that way.
They were always treated as heroes. All these people are treated as heroes.
None of them have ever done anything that was past, like, Legend 3 at the most. Like, you got Betsy Ross as Legend 12, and the only thing she ever did was sew a flag. That is what she did. And that's really important.
Great flag.
That's important to our...
She didn't design it either, right? She just...
I don't remember. But, like...
No one would let women design a flag, right?
Half of school children today don't know who she is, and that's because she only sewed a flag. Like... That's a great part of our national identity. It's good to remember her.
Rosie the River isn't actually anyone.
She was just... she's just like John Bull in the Allied Pantheon, where she was a symbol invented for an advertising campaign. And that's all she ever was.
Well, John Bull's a propaganda campaign, right? He's Uncle Sam.
Well, yeah, it's just the government advertising.
So yeah.
Suffrage advertising.
Well, I mean, you can get by a little bit on national representation of a figure.
Yeah, I mean, and a god could take on that role. But the thing is, they're not saying a god took on that role.
Yes.
They're saying that role is a god.
That would be really cool. That would be cool if each of these folklore people was... They took someone in mythology, maybe a group of... Especially since America's such a melting pot.
Yes, that would be really
a giant
amazing.
group of gods from each different pantheon.
Like if John Bull were actually Thor. Like, that would be really cool. Like if you were like the gods represented these things, and that's how they had influence over this.
That's how they influenced this new country. And this
Which
new
would be
stuff.
very
You keep bringing up
American
John Bull, who isn't in America. When I bring up the American people.
I didn't mean John Bull. I meant John Henry.
You mean John Henry?
I meant John Henry this time. I meant John Bull the first time.
Oh, okay.
The advertising thing. But yes, that would be really amazing. And there are a couple people in here that are gods. They're not Legend 12, but like Britannia is probably actually a god. She's like a Legend 9.
Yeah, she's a Danish kid, so she pops out.
Yeah, she gets kicked around by Mars some. She's around. And Baba Yaga is actually a god. She is a mess there.
Right, Britannia's not actually a Danish kid. That's in the book.
She's not, but she is the deified goddess of Britain, according to the Romans.
Yeah.
Like, she's a Roman goddess. That's a real thing. And Baba Yaga is a real Slavic goddess. And if you consider that Rodina Mat is probably the same as Moist Mother Earth Mokosh, then she's a real goddess. But most of these people are not. And some of it is even, like, borderline offensive. Like, the citizen, as a god of the Soviet pantheon, like, it's so much... The citizen bothers me not just because we're saying, okay, here's communism and a god. Because whatever, I mean, the Russians were for a really long time communists and still in some ways lean that way. But the citizen is our Western interpretation of what Russia was. Like, it's not even the Russian interpretation of those ideals. It's our image of that as like a no-name, numberless person who only exists to further the country's goals, which is not necessarily the way that Russians looked at it or, talked about it to each other. And it's just a horrible, horrible mess of, like, there's some cool things, because something that is as nationalistically fraught as the Second World War can be a really cool setting for a Scion game. But there's so many parts of this that are just poorly, poorly executed, or that take choices away and replace them with weird, bizarre stuff. Like, there's just almost none of it that you can use, really. And then the stats for things like weapons and armor and tanks conflict again with the stats that you already got for those in other parts of the game line.
Like, so in World War II, 60 years ago, all the weapons were better than they are today. I don't know if you knew this, but like rifle in 1940 was almost double as good as a rifle today. I didn't know that about how machinery works and technology.
Which is, again, a different freelancer wrote this than wrote the other weapon sections. And so they just added, look, this is what I think stats should be, and it didn't make any match up with anything else in the book.
And then there's do bombs and stuff, just give random amounts of damage, and then they try to add all these systems for like military combat that doesn't fit in the game and then also doesn't fit in the system. They also added something called long ticks for movement on the battlefield, and a bunch of stuff for like leading armies. And if this was a whole book on how to do military stuff and leading armies in Scion, that might be good, but the amount they try to cover in 5 pages just confuses and doesn't work.
I think that's maybe the best thing you can get out of it, is that it does give you some rules for, okay, if I'm running a large-scale battle in my Science, have like armies and units.
No, because it's bad. That's the problem. That's what I'm trying to say, is what they've done here is whatever you plan on doing, if you try to use this, it will be bad. It's not cohegent. It's not rules that are easily understandable or even work when they are understandable. Yeah, cohegent.
Okay.
Cohegent. It
That's how
doesn't
mad we are.
cohesive. It's not cohesive.
Okay, yeah. Or coherent, or any of those other things. Or cogent. I think we were using all those words at once.
No, cohegent.
Cohegent.
And then you have the amazing. Where'd it go?
Too angry. Vehicular combat.
Yamato. It is a.
Oh my god, that thing.
It's got to be a battleship. A largest battleship ever built. Longer than most skyscrapers are tall. I don't know if that's true.
It's probably true. I believe that they looked that up. But the problem...
Skyscrapers are fucking huge.
Well, maybe skyscrapers at this time.
Empire State Building's up.
I don't know how large the Yamato was, but I believe him. But the problem with the Yamato is that it is much harder to kill than a god.
It has 75,000 health levels.
And yeah, I mean, it doesn't get a DV, but at that point...
Yeah, with 15 soak, whatever. I just want you to think about that. Like, Thor would take hours to kill this.
Like, it's...
Are you sure you don't want me to do whatever you're doing in my head really
Yes.
quickly?
Well, I was going to give an example of, like, how many health levels these Titan avatars have versus that battleship.
Well, they just have basic health.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
So
and, what are the soaks on that thing? Because, these guys...
only 15.
For lethal?
All soaks. Because
Oh.
it uses...
All
It
soaks?
has armor. Vehicles have armor.
Yeah, but it doesn't have ag.
All soaks.
Okay, so it has more ag stuff than any Titan avatar can ever have?
Yeah.
Because Titan avatars can only have 10. At most.
Well, let's say, is armor in here anywhere? Is armor described at any point in this book?
I feel like it can't have ag because it's a mundane boat. But, regardless, either way...
No, because remember, all armor also gives ag soak. That's a rule in Companion. They add it in fucking Companion.
Because battleships need soul soak, right? So, they have that now. So, I feel like we're getting very long-winded in our jumping at Companion, but Companion's a hot, hot mess.
Yeah, we should have told you before we got to Companion just to turn it off.
It's a mess. And, again, a couple of things that I like. And, I'm really grateful that it came out and it added these things to the world and it made people interested in them. But so much of it is such a mess. So much.
It's just fucking horrible.
So, we have had the longest vlog ever because you let us complain about it. So, to go back to the original question, which is how much of these core books should you actually use? And I don't know if you want us to give you a percentage. I don't know how we can come up with that. But basically, you're going to have to use your own judgment. You're going to have to read stuff and be like, okay, is this something that makes sense? Is this something that mechanically works?
Yeah, you have to have your own brain. Look at it, read it, see if it's real.
If it looks fishy, go look it up, see if it's
Yeah.
actually a legit thing or if it's something somebody made up. Or
If it's story stuff, you probably got to take it with a grain of salt. It's probably not your best stuff.
And that doesn't always mean it's terrible. Like I said, some of the Ragnarok story stuff is made up and it's still pretty good. But for the most part, you're going to have to actually make judgment calls yourself. And unfortunately, we can't make them all for you. Like, we do a lot. If you look at our website, there's all of the mechanical
Yeah, I would say just use the website as much as possible. Use very little of the books. Use it for going through, but double check all your work. Don't use it like take out a book and read something and make it fact. Make sure, act like it's fact. You can't do it. If you really have a question, go ahead and send it into the blog, and we'll try to help you with it. But
I mean, obviously, there's enough awesome stuff in these books that it made us really fall in love with this game and want to make it better. But that doesn't, unfortunately, make it...
The more we worked on it, the more we found out how bad it was.
Yeah, and I know some people are fine with it, but we really, like, a lot of stuff in there is just stuff that we would never run. And it's just, we can't recommend it in good conscience because we're like,
We wouldn't recommend it in
it's
bad conscience. No, if you like it, you're a horrible person.
That's not true.
Horrible person, especially if you like the World War II stuff. But there was one I wanted to say. What made us fall in love with it was really the intro fiction and the imagination and it's really good stuff.
It's
and I
an
think
amazing setting.
making your players read that, going into demigod, going into god, like preparing for that kind of stuff. The
basic awesomeness of Scion is this is an amazing premise to be the children of the gods and build your own new myths, and that it has a good basic system of scaling epics, which give you that divine power curve, and then all the godly powers that you can use.
Yeah.
Those basics are amazing. Past that point, you have to make judgment calls because a lot of it's a mess.
Mm-hmm. So there you go. That's everything. Subscribe up there.
If you made it this far, it's the longest vlog ever.
Oh, one of the things I saw that people do is because they are reading this in a vlog, they put a little thing up here that's like right there. It'll be like you can hit subscribe here or here, and then it'll subscribe automatically because they don't read it on YouTube, so they don't get the subscribe guy up there or the like button.
Okay.
So that you can do it in there.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, if you guys are like techno wizards, you can tell us. This has been way long. No one's listening. Goodbye,
Right. But we love
everybody.
you. Bye bye now.